life. You know, I would run until I got heel spurs and I stopped running, but always interested in cars. Everybody have a personal interest? Running or sports or anything like that? Always maintain that. That keeps your sanity. I get involved with cars and motorcycles, antique cars and motorcycles and trucks, and keep my hand in that. And that keeps me sane. You got to do something to keep your other interests, because it's not all work all the time. What do you think my typical day is like? Anybody? And just take a guess. I don't eat, sleep, and drink this. What some will say I do. Yes.
You just told the professor that you are like on the clock from what, 10 to 6? Or
Yeah, I typically punch the clock. Now it's all digital. 10:30 till 6:30. But my day, I'll take today as an example. Every day as the New London bureau chief, I have to give them, my editors and my bosses, a menu of ideas, suggestions as to what I think is important for stories for me to do in this region. My region is Madison to Westerly, all the way up to Putnam, Thompson, and Yukon stores. But today, after giving them my list of story ideas, around 10:20 I meet a photographer who comes from Bolton, Connecticut, meets me in Norwich. I go from Griswold now, meet him in Norwich, and we go on our merry way in one car on our assignments. So my editor says, and this is how it works. You just get a little 1 or 2 lines. There's a shortage of cleats, sport cleats. What do you do with that? Anybody? Take a stab at it. How do you begin investigating a story about a shortage of sports cleats?
You look at who it affects and how it affects them.
Say that again?
You look at who it affects and how it affects them.
Okay, and what source would you go to?
Probably athletes who don't have cleats because of the shortage.
Okay, you've got 5 minutes to find it. Where do you go?
Practice fields.
Okay,
You
Go
go
to
to,
practice fields and
you could go to a sports like store, is that what it-
exactly.
Just depends like where did you get this story from? Because if they have the story, then
Well, we mine a lot of social media now, and there's, if you look it up, sports cleats on Facebook or something, and you'll get inundated with parents trying to find, who knows where I can find this, I'll trade you this for that. And so there's an owner of New Balance stores, he owns 3 of them. We call him, we got hooked up with him in South Windsor at 2 o'clock. But first I made calls. I texted the headmaster at St. Bernard's in Uncasville, and I also texted the PIO, Public Information Officer, at Norwich Free Academy. So St. Bernard's comes back and says, nah, we're not seeing anything. He reached out to the sports director, the athletic director, and then, but I get a positive feedback from Norwich Free Academy. Hey, the track coach says, yeah, kids are having a hard time finding cleats. And then my editors gave me some more support information that was national about it. That's because of production slowdowns and caused by the pandemic, and there's a shortage. So I also reached out to Play It Again Sports. Anybody familiar with that brand? So a woman I know who owns a store in West Hartford says, oh yeah, 90% of calls coming into the store are, do you have cleats of this size or this color? Well, cleats anywhere, you're not gonna get a color. You're either gonna be lucky to get a pair of cleats or not. So it's now 11 o'clock, so we get our assignment at 10:30. It's 11 o'clock, we get shut down at St. Bernard's, we get a positive NFA, meet us in 10 minutes. And so we're off on our way to Norwich Free Academy. Talk to the coach, and he says, as a matter of fact, I have a closet full of hand-me-downs. So we go to his closet, he opens the door, and it's filled with shoes, with cleats that he's giving away to students. So visually, all right, here's a source, here's the coach, here's a teacher, who's got a supply, and he's talking about it in the shortage. And I get a call back from Play It Again. We go up to West Hartford. And that's at, let's see, that was an hour later. We're in West Hartford. Now we're driving two different cars and trying to communicate at the same time. Get to West Hartford, we go in the store, and there are shelves of shoes, used shoes, every size imaginable, up to 18, with cleats. Every sport you can imagine. Field hockey, track, even high jump. You know how much a high jump shoe is? It's over $200. Who knew? Then we connect with the guy out in South Windsor with the New Balance store. And then we put together a story. Now we start writing with facts and figures from what they provide us and from what parents say. So that story aired an hour ago, exactly an hour ago. But you find sources. You're just giving a note, a line. Cleat shortage. Then you got to start digging. Like, how am I going to tell this one? So that was today, and then come here. So I probably put on 150 miles. So I had to start off in Saybrook. Go from Griswold to Saybrook to Norwich, West Hartford, South Windsor, here. That's today. Tomorrow, I'm already pre-assigned to do a feature that's a surprise, Liberty Bank surprise squad. I know it doesn't fall under journalism, but the boss is paying the bills, and the boss wants you to do a story, which is featurey that we've been doing for years. So I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but it's a local story about somebody in need, and I'm going to give them a $500 check, which will be nice. I have to reread what my boss sent me to understand the scope of the story, because they're trying to do a walkathon for the first time for this incurable disease that a family member has. So they want the publicity that the story will do to generate interest in attracting people to do the walk, so they can raise money. So we're going to help them by giving them both, giving them some money, which will be a seed to help them, as well as the publicity. It'll be on social media too. Oh, and while doing my story today, also I have to do Facebook and Twitter and provide all that. Then they want to make sure you have high content in Twitter so we get feedback. That's journalism today. Stories. Anybody ever hear of the wood chipper trial? Richard Crafts? Helicrafts? Guy, a former pilot, allegedly for the CIA, froze his wife's body. She was a stewardess. They lived in Newtown. Killed her, froze her body. Okay, allegedly killed her, but they proved in two trials that he killed her. Threw her frozen body in a wood chipper along the Lake Zor, or Housatonic River, 1987. Ever hear of that?
Oh, is that what
Wood
inspired
chipper.
a little motion picture?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was the only reporter to cover both trials, and that was 30-something years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We did an anniversary, on the 25th anniversary, 30th anniversary to the story on it. He served his time. He's now in his 80s, and he's out of prison. He's now in a halfway house in Bridgeport. But covering the trial, what you as a reporter see, this is the first time they allowed cameras in the courtroom, which was unheard of. Connecticut didn't allow it. But we were right here in New London for the first trial, in the courthouse, the White Building.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there would be one camera, and everybody, we used large cassettes, half-inch tape cassettes. I started when I did WNEW, it was film. I would run the film canisters when the crew came in from the street. I would run the film canisters 5 floors down to the developing tank in the basement, where the developing crew processed the film. Then when it was ready, I brought it back up to the editor, who would splice it the film and edit the stories. Then we transitioned, fast forward a few years later, now we're doing videotape, DTR. It'd be large half-inch, 3/4 initially, then half-inch. Now everything's digital. I could put a whole show on a chip smaller than my thumbnail. So technology has really changed. There weren't computers when I started radio, laptops. I had the first one in the market. I had a Tandy Radio Shack where I had to put a floppy disk in all the time to write, load, and to download. I had to hook it up to a phone. Jeez, that seems so long ago. But I always embrace the technology because it makes your job easier. For radio, we had to tell stories out in the field. We had to go to a public phone, take the mouthpiece off, and clip these things called alligator clips onto the wires there to feed our audio or to do a story. Today, it's just send it. It's so easy today. And who knows what's going to be like 30 years from now? If you just think it, I don't know. And it's amazing. Technology has changed. So going back to the Richard Kraft's trial, so technology there, we had to go live. We had a satellite truck. Everybody recall these large satellite dishes on trucks, or a microwave truck. There'd be another truck, a vehicle, broadcast vehicle. It would stick a large 40-foot mast up in the air with a dish that would be tunable. They don't need those anymore. They use them occasionally, but you don't need them. We do. I think I shared it last time. Backpack. We have a thing called a backpack, just like the backpacks you guys have. But inside is a computer that will coordinate 6 cell phone services, compress the audio and video paths. It would be two-way. We could transmit out anything we write on our laptop, anything we edit on our laptop, we send it out, and we can receive also the same way. Our graphics, I create a graphic image with the producer. They create it back in the studio, and they send it back. It could be animation, it could be anything. It could be scripted words, something reading out from, say, a affidavit from a courtroom. I'll send it back. This is, the detective said, so-and-so did this, and whatever it is said, that's how we do it now. Technology is just amazing. It makes our job much easier. The Kraft's trial, we had a broadcast from a live satellite truck right down the street here, every day. And then just hearing Dr. Henry Lee, who at the time was the state's chief forensic scientist, hear him talk about the case. And then there'd be segments where the judge would clear the courtroom, not the journalist, but the jury, as they discussed things that they couldn't bring up in court, that the prosecutor wanted to bring up. You'll never hear this, because it was said in the courtroom. The prosecution wanted to bring up the fact that Richard Kraft had this black book of hits that he made for the CIA and other killings he did in Colombia back in the 60s. The judge said that wasn't pertinent to the case. Plus, they found the black book in his trunk, which they opened without a warrant. Inadmissible. You can't use it. You can't tell the jury that he had a black book of hits because you opened the trunk. That's how you found it. Without a warrant. Threw that out. Can't do it. Those are things that were never brought up because the jury couldn't hear about that. They never did. I mean, I'm sure by now they have. But you sit there, you're as a journalist, you're sitting in the front row of news that's happening in your world. You're exposed to these stories and people, tragedies, mostly tragedies. I don't know why. know, every time there's some kind of a fatal accident, murder or something, they send you out and the editors ask Professor Howard, editors say, go see what the family says. I can tell you what the family says. You know, get out of here. You know, but sometimes you just have to do it. And sometimes families who are in great pain may feel a need to talk and open up. And you might be the conduit for that. A lot of times that's happened, and I'm like amazed. You get the most wonderful responses and stories. It's just amazing.